Good morning, learners. Good morning, learners. My name is Mr. Paul Chilola once again, your teacher on this platform and other paid platforms. Welcome to the first topic in MSCE Chemistry, which is called Experimental Techniques. This is Form 3 Chemistry. Once again, if this is the first time you have visited this channel, I would gladly request you to consider subscribing so that every time I upload a new video lesson, you are the first one to know. Also remember to hit the notification bell for you to be notified every time I upload a new video. So we are going to look at a number of issues under this topic, experimental techniques. All right, your syllabus requires that we should introduce to you the concept of chemical waste. What a chemical waste is, you'll be asked to define, to give a definition of a chemical waste. So as far as this topic is concerned, we are going to define a chemical waste as simply a product or unwanted material from a chemical reaction or an expired product which is no longer needed for any experiment in the next activity. Define the term chemical waste. 1 mark. Define the term chemical waste. It is the product. So a chemical waste is a product or unwanted material from a chemical reaction or an expired product which is no longer needed for any experiment in the next activity. All right, so think about a chemical reaction, any chemical reaction. Let's suppose that we are carrying out a chemical reaction in which hydrochloric acid, HCl, in solution form is reacting with another substance, say sodium hydroxide, which is also in a solution form. When these two react, they will form a salt which is called sodium chloride in aqueous or in a solution form, in addition to water, H2O, in liquid form. So these two substances are the products of the reaction. So in many cases, the products formed in a chemical reaction may not be required for use in the next experiment, may not be useful in the next experiment. Therefore, these are considered to be chemical wastes. Let's suppose that you burned a piece of paper to demonstrate the concept of combustion, for example. So when you burn a piece of paper, it will form ash, which is not going to be needed again in the next experiment. Therefore, the ash formed when you burn paper, it is called a chemical waste. Why? Because it is not going to be needed again. So the criteria for labeling a substance as a chemical waste: 1, it must be a product from a chemical reaction. It must be an unwanted material from a chemical reaction, such that such a chemical may not be needed for any experiment in the next activity. But it can also refer to a substance or a product which is expired. So expired chemicals, expired substances in your lab are all classified as chemical wastes. So they may ask you a question like to say, state the criteria for identifying a substance as a chemical waste. We are saying, one, such a substance is unwanted, okay? It is a product from a chemical reaction. It is also expired. So these are the features of a substance which qualify it as a chemical waste. All right, that's very, very important. So some examples of waste products from a chemical reaction include unused chemicals. For example, acids, alkalis, solid chemicals, and others. All these are considered to be wastes. Okay? Let's suppose that you were carrying out an experiment in which you are reacting an acid and an alkali. An alkali is like a base which has been dissolved in water. For example, sodium hydroxide is an alkali. Okay? So an acid can be HCl, which is hydrochloric acid. An alkali is, an example is sodium hydroxide. So you are carrying out a reaction involving these two, or between these two substances, and you have some chemicals that have not been used. They remain at the end of the experiment. Therefore, they are considered to be chemical wastes, right? Chemical wastes, and they must be disposed of accordingly to avoid contamination. Or let's suppose that maybe you have some solid chemicals such as sodium hydroxide, again, sodium hydroxide pellets. These are in solid states, okay? And let's say you were asked to be adding little by little to a given solution and observe the reaction, right? And at the end of the experiment, maybe you find that you still have some pellets which are unreacted. These are considered to be chemical wastes, all right? Another example of wastes are broken laboratory glassware and sharp objects. Okay, let's suppose that you were carrying out an experiment in which you were using glassware such as beakers. So we are looking at beakers, broken test tubes, even broken thermometers. Remember that thermometers are made of glass. Yeah, so broken materials from these materials are considered to be wastes. Objects such as, sharp objects such as scalpels which are no longer needed, needles, all these are categorized as wastes. They are examples of wastes. Plastics, waste paper, and rubbers. So this is a classification of wastes based on type of material. Some materials can be plastic paper, for example, waste paper such as tissue paper, the one you use to wipe your bench once you finish your experiment, and some rubber materials. All these are considered to be wastes. Poisonous gases from reactions. For example, some reactions can produce poisonous gases such as carbon monoxide. These are considered to be wastes. All right, so far so good. We have looked at the definition of a chemical waste and some examples. Make sure you know all of them so that in an exam you can give any two. So a question in an exam can come, say, to ask you to define a chemical waste and to give any two examples. Now, wastes, once accumulated in your lab or in your environment, will create a situation which is not conducive to living. Therefore, there is need to dispose such waste. All right, so dispose simply means to find a way of getting rid of. To dispose means to get rid of the chemicals, to remove them from where they are generated, let's say from your lab. How do you safely get rid of these wastes? To get rid simply means, to dispose simply means to get rid or to remove them and throw them away to appropriate sites. All right, so your syllabus requires you to know the different safe ways of disposing chemical waste. One of them is the use of normal waste bins. All right, so ensure that you have a bin in your lab. Okay, so these are put, sometimes they're put at the corner of your lab there, at the entrance there, so that each time a waste is generated, it can be thrown into such bins. So this way can be used for waste such as non-recycled plastics. So plastics can be thrown into the bin. Plastic pieces of wood, rubber, and the dirty papers. These can be thrown into normal waste bins. Okay, so we are saying the type of materials that can be disposed this way include, but not limited to, plastic papers which cannot be recycled, pieces of wood. Suppose that maybe in a particular activity you cut some pieces of wood, such that if not disposed of, they will create an unbearable environment. So these can be thrown into such a bin. Rubber and dirty papers, these can be collected, put together, and thrown into the bin. So know the type of waste which is disposed of by a given method. All right. Another method to safely dispose waste is to use special controlled waste containers. So there are some containers that are set aside for disposing waste. All right, so these may be used to dispose sharp objects like scalpels, which I mentioned earlier on, broken beakers, broken glassware, broken test tubes, sample tubes, and the items contaminated with hazardous chemicals. These can be thrown in such special controlled waste containers. So these must be emptied regularly and not allowed to overflow. So once they are full, such containers should be emptied, should be taken to a place where they can safely be thrown away and buried. All right, so you should not allow these containers to overflow. So once again, you should know the type of waste and how you can safely dispose it. Sometimes there are wastes that you simply have to drain in using a lot of water, usually in sinks. All right, so wastes which can be drained include harmless soluble organic salts and contaminated, as well as used acids and the alkalis, including detergents. All right, take note. So these you can simply pour or decant into the sinks, okay, so that they can go down the drainage system of your laboratory. All right, so wastes which can be drained include harmless soluble substances, organic salts, and contaminated, as well as used acids and the alkalis, including detergents. Detergents are the cleaning chemicals, right, such as soaps. These can be drained into the drainage system of your laboratory. All right, Another one is to use a technique which is called the recycling. All right. So materials that can be recycled include broken glass. This means that such materials can be turned into something useful. All right. For example, broken measuring cylinders can be turned into something that can be used again. All right. Plastic waste and paper can be converted into something else. All right. Last but not least, we have a method which is called incineration as a technique for disposing waste. All right. So incineration is simply a technique which is used to dispose waste by burning them. Incinerate simply means to be burnt. So waste that can be incinerated include syringes, needles, or organic solvents, syringes, needles, organic solvents, soluble organic waste, paraffin, and mineral oils. All these can be burned in a process called incineration. All right, so far so good. We've looked at the meaning of a waste. What is a waste? We've looked at some examples of chemical wastes, as well as different safe ways of disposing waste. So make sure you know the different techniques of disposing waste and the examples of waste that can be disposed that way. All right, once again, my name is Mr. Paul Chilola. I'm glad that you are there, you are learning, and I hope that you are doing your best, you are studying hard to prepare for your exams very well. Remember, the idea for this channel, for setting up this channel, is to make sure that as many candidates as possible pass their science subjects in the MSCE exams and the other equivalent exams. In case you need special lessons, don't hesitate to reach us on the number that I gave earlier on so that we can arrange private tuition for you. My name, once again, Mr. Paul Chilola. Consider subscribing, invite your friends so that as many of your friends can learn and prepare themselves for exams in the sciences. Bye-bye. We meet again. In our next lesson, we'll be talking about a scientific investigation, all right, and what it constitutes. All right, so for now, I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.